millionaire's shocking reaction after seeing homeless man steal from disabled boy's toy. Jonathan Clark was a man used to control. Sharp suit, sharper mind, and a cold demeanor that kept everyone at arm's length. But that overcast afternoon, as he strolled through the city park, something felt off. The hum of cars blended with the laughter of kids, parents chatting, dogs barking. It was the usual chaos of city life. Yet inside him, a strange restlessness was building. Like an itch he couldn't scratch, no matter how hard he tried. He usually avoided places like this, preferring glass towers and polished boardrooms. But today, distracted and uneasy, he found himself wandering, watching people without really seeing them. His eyes flicked over sun-bleached benches, muddy pathways, and the dull gleam of puddles left from a morning drizzle. Then, near the playground, a sudden noise broke the dull roar of the afternoon, a brief commotion that caught Jonathan's attention. He spotted a boy, no older than 6, sitting quietly in a wheelchair. His hand clutched a colorful toy truck, its paint chipped from much use, but it sparkled with all the boy's care and joy anyway. A homeless man lurked nearby, moving like a shadow. His clothes hung in tatters, face grimy and pale, eyes darting nervously. Then, suddenly, the man's hand shot out, snatching the toy truck from the boy's grip. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Time seemed to freeze. The boy's eyes widened, a flash of confusion and hurt filling his face. His lips trembled, as if about to cry. The man turned, clutching the toy like a lifeline, his body shaking, not with cold, but with desperation. A raw, ugly pain that scratched at Jonathan's insides. The city noises faded. Only the muffled sobs of the boy cut through the heavy silence. Jonathan felt his breath catch. His heart hammered painfully against his ribs. For the first time in years, the icy shield around him cracked. Not anger, not disgust, but shock and something deeper, something like guilt or pity. He didn't want to look, but he couldn't look away. Who was this man? What dark road led him to steal from a child who already had so little? And why did this stolen toy suddenly hold the weight of the city's forgotten stories? Around them, whispers bubbled up. How could he, that poor kid? Is no one going to stop him? Faces twisted in confusion and disgust, yet no one moved. Jonathan's hand twitched. He stepped closer, the toy slipping from the man's trembling grasp and into his own hand. The cold plastic felt heavy, like it carried all the pain of that playground, all the silent cries buried in the alleys of the city. Jonathan stood rooted, heart pounding, mind racing. Should he step in, speak up, or should he walk away and let the shadows stay hidden? The gray clouds above seemed to weigh down on the moment, thick and unyielding. His eyes flicked back to the homeless man's haunted face. His own hands clenched tight around that small, stolen truck. And just like that, The game had changed. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just quickly check that red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're at it, leave that powerful like. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know each incredible person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Jonathan's fingers curled tightly around the cold plastic truck. His chest felt tight, breath shallow. He stared down at the object, a simple toy, and suddenly, it wasn't just a toy anymore. It was everything broken in this city, everything ignored. The homeless man's eyes flicked up, wild, haunted. Then, something shifted in his face. Pain twisting into something sharper. Fear? Recognition? Before Jonathan could say a word, the man stammered, voice cracking. You don't know me." Jonathan blinked, confusion sharp. The man swallowed hard. "I was supposed to meet someone here. Someone who changed everything." The gathered crowd leaned in, whispers you could slice. "What's going on? Who's this guy really?" Jonathan's gut clenched. A flicker beneath that tattered skin. Something familiar. His entire body froze when the man's gaze locked with his. "Jonathan," the homeless man said, voice barely above a breath. "It's me." Time snapped. Jonathan's heart slammed. "No, can't be," Jonathan whispered. But the man's face, though dirt-streaked and ragged, was unmistakable. The sharp jawline, the eyes, his eyes, but sunken, worn, desperate. "Luke?" A gasp rippled. Luke, their lost brother. The brother Jonathan had never spoken of. The brother torn from the family years ago, in silence and shame. Believed dead, gone. The crowd shifted, stunned murmurs hanging heavy. "No way. That's impossible." Luke's hands trembled violently. His eyes filled with tears and something darker. Rage, guilt, sorrow, all tangled in one raw knot. "I didn't want to steal. Not really. I needed to see you, to tell you what happened." Jonathan shook his head, breath shuddering. "Why didn't you tell me? Why disappear into this hell?" Luke's voice broke, desperate. "I tried, but when I called, no one picked up. When I came back, you'd changed. The family had changed. I lost everything, and I didn't know where else to go." The boy in the wheelchair stared, wide-eyed, clutching nothing now. His mother rushed forward, tears streaming. The crowd's cold judgment melted into a stunned silence. Jonathan looked around. The same city he'd built his empire in had swallowed his brother whole. Erased him without a trace. A harsh, bitter laugh escaped Luke. "Do you know what it feels like? To be invisible? To be treated like a ghost? Like you're nothing? Jonathan's fists clenched, nails biting into his palms, as guilt crashed over him like a tidal wave. The toy truck dropped from his hand, hitting the ground with a hollow clatter that felt like a damnation. And then, a sudden siren pierced the fragile stillness. Police cars screeched into the park, engines roaring. Flashing lights turned faces pale. "Sir, step back," an officer barked, eyes sharp, hands on the holstered gun. Luke raised his hands slowly. "I'm not dangerous." Jonathan's mind raced. How had it come to this? How had his worlds collided so violently, so tragically? Before he could react, a voice cracked through the chaos. A child's voice, trembling but firm. "Brother?" Jonathan's breath hitched. The boy, the one in the wheelchair, pointed shakily at Luke. "Luke is my brother. He's been missing for years. Mom told me stories." Whispers exploded. The crowd gasped. The mother gasped. Jonathan's knees nearly buckled. The truth battered the air. The homeless man, the thief, was family. His darkest secret, his buried shame, standing right there, broken and raw, in front of everyone. Luke's eyes met Jonathan's with a wild, painful hope. "I wanted to come home." Jonathan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The city seemed to hold its breath. And in that heavy pause, a new question burned loud and clear. What really happened to Luke all those years ago? And who had tried to make sure he never came back? Jonathan's breath hitched. He stared at Luke, heart thundering in his chest. The whole world tilting on that single word, home. The boy in the wheelchair looked between them, eyes wide and shining with a hope so fragile it cracked something deep inside Jonathan. The crowd hung frozen. Somewhere, a dog barked once, sharp and quick. The afternoon air had gone thick, like the city was holding its breath right along with them. Then, without warning, the sharp crack of a shot split the silence. Gasps exploded everywhere. The boy screamed, a high, desperate sound. Jonathan spun, eyes locking on the source. A man in a dark suit, barely seen against the gray sky, standing by the edge of the crowd. His face was carved from anger, something cold and terrible behind his eyes. "Get back!" the officer yelled, voice breaking as he reached for his radio. Panic spread like wildfire. Jonathan's legs trembled. His chest tightened, breath shallow and fast. Luke dropped to his knees, hands clutching his head, like he was trying to hold himself together. The toy truck lay forgotten at his feet. "What the hell?" someone shouted, pushing toward the edge, eyes wild. And then another shot rang out, closer this time. People screamed, scattering, pushing, crashing into each other. Jonathan froze, heart pounding like a drum in his ears. The boy's mother's face was drained of color, tears spilling down her cheeks as she shielded her child. Jonathan wanted to reach for Luke, but the crowd yanked him back. "Who is that?" a voice cried. "Why are they shooting?" Someone near Jonathan whispered, sharp with panic. "They're after him. After Luke." Jonathan's blood ran cold. His mind scrambled. After Luke, what had he gotten himself tangled in? Suddenly, Luke looked up, eyes blazing through the fear and pain. "Jonathan," he gasped, voice ragged. "I'm not who you think I am." Jonathan blinked, confusion crashing in. Luke's hands moved trembling to his chest, pulling out a small, folded piece of paper, yellowed and worn. With shaking fingers, he pressed it into Jonathan's palm. Crackling paper. Jonathan unfolded it, eyes scanning the jagged handwriting. The words tumbled out. Names, dates, threats. A hidden truth unveiled like a wound ripped open. Luke's voice broke through the chaos. "I wasn't just homeless. I was running. From your company. From you." Jonathan's throat tightened. "Me? I don't understand." The crowd's voices blurred into a dull roar. Shouts, sobs, broke the city's usual noise. Luke's face twisted, half anger, half shame. "You built your empire on lies. On ruins. My ruin." Jonathan's heart slammed against his ribs. The private world he'd built shattered. This brother, this ghost, was not just lost or broken. He was a threat, a warning. "Why?" Jonathan whispered, fear pooling sick and sharp. Luke's eyes burned with pain and fury. "Because I discovered what you hid, what you stole, and when I tried to bring it to light, you buried me." Sirens screamed again, closer now. Police pushed forward, raising shields. The dark man with the gun slipped back into the shadows, vanishing. Jonathan's hands shook. The note trembled between his fingers. The weight of years pressed down, heavy and dark. The boy in the wheelchair looked at Luke, then back at Jonathan. Confusion and hope mixed in his gaze. Jonathan's world turned upside down. His brother, the homeless thief, the secret kept in silence, the threat still out there, ready to explode. Outside, the city breathed, unaware. Inside, everything had just changed. Who was Luke, really? What darkness from Jonathan's past had turned family into enemies? And who would pay the price when the truth came crashing down? The questions burned louder than the sirens. The answers, hidden, dangerous, waiting. And somewhere in the distance, the night crept closer, silent, cold, and unforgiving. Jonathan's chest heaved, pulse hammering, as the boy's words echoed. "Luke is my brother." The crowd stood frozen, breaths caught in their throats. The air thickened, heavy, like the calm before a storm. Then, suddenly, a sharp snap cracked through the silence. Heads whipped around, phones lifted, capturing the moment. Jonathan's eyes locked onto the source. A woman stepping out of the crowd, her face bruised, eyes wild with fury. She moved fast, reckless, pushing past the police line like it wasn't there. "Stop!" she screamed, voice ragged but fierce. "No one's telling the real story." She reached Luke, grabbed his arm with desperate strength. You can't trust him. None of this is what it seems. The crowd gasped. Murmurs blossomed into chaos. Jonathan blinked, stunned, heart sinking. The woman's stare was raw, charged. Recognition hit him hard. Sarah? He gasped. The sister he thought lost. The one who vanished years ago, and no one dared speak of. Her face twisted, words slashing through the charged air. Luke's not a victim. He's part of it. All of it. Her voice cracked with grief and betrayal. He didn't just vanish. He ran away because of what we did. Because of what you did. Luke's face went pale, shock breaking through his fog. The boy in the wheelchair looked between them, eyes wide, fear blooming. Jonathan's breath hitched. What are you talking about? Sarah's hands shook as she pulled a thin folder from her torn jacket, thrusting it toward Jonathan. Look, you've been living in lies, John. The whole family has secrets buried deeper than you know. With trembling fingers, Jonathan pulled out the papers, photos, documents, faded letters. Reality hit like a punch. In the photos, Luke stood beside men in suits, faces cold and serious, meetings hidden from family eyes. Then reports, financial deals, covert projects. One photo burned itself into Jonathan's mind. Luke, smiling darkly next to a man who looked like Jonathan himself, but younger, harsher, almost different. Sarah's voice dropped, sharp and bitter. Luke wasn't just a lost brother. He was your partner, your shadow, the brother you threw away because he crossed a line. Because he was part of the dirty work. The crowd shrank back, whispers ripping through like fire. No way. This can't be real. Luke looked shattered, tears mixing with rage. You don't get it. I tried to leave it all behind, but it followed me. They made me disappear. The city buried me alive. Jonathan's hands shook as he flipped the papers. His whole life fractured. The truth wasn't the broken, homeless brother he'd imagined. It was a buried empire of lies, betrayal, and murder. Then something even darker slipped free. A chilling silence fell, just before the boy's mother screamed. Mom, her voice cracking. The child's small, trembling fingers pointed, eyes locked on her. Behind Jonathan, a new voice echoed, a chilling calm that sliced through the chaos. Jonathan. He spun. The man in the dark suit stepped forward, face pale, eyes colder than steel. I didn't shoot, he whispered. But I know who did. Shock rolled through the crowd like thunder. Jonathan blinked, heart twisting painfully. The man's gaze bore into him with icy clarity. Your empire was built on blood, and soon your family will pay the price. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them, a low roar swelling from the street. Sirens blared again, but this time far off, faster. Chaos exploded. The boy's mother clutched her child tighter, her sobs raw and ragged. Jonathan looked down. Sarah's folder slipped from his hands, fluttering open to a photo that froze his breath cold. A photo of Jonathan, standing over a man with a bullet wound, one he didn't remember, but whose blood soaked the sheets beneath. His fingers trembled. His own face in the picture, different, stranger. The truth twisted and shattered all he thought he knew. Luke looked at Jonathan, eyes burning with something unreadable. "Do you really know me? Or did you only want to believe the brother you lost?" Jonathan's chest tightened, breath trembling, heart broken wide open. The sirens grew louder, the night falling faster, and all around them the city waited, silent and hungry. What secrets had Jonathan buried so deep that even he was a stranger to himself? And who would be left standing when the mask finally fell away? Jonathan's chest tightened, breath shallow. The city around him blurred, faces twisted in shock, whispers like thunder rolling across the park. Sarah's folder slipped from his fingers, papers fluttering to the ground as his gaze locked on Luke, eyes full of fire, pain, and something wild. Then the air snapped. A sudden crack echoed again, but not a gunshot. A scream. A fight breaking out nearby. The crowd jolted as footsteps pounded, hurried and chaotic. Jonathan squinted into the gathering dusk. The dark-suited man stepped forward, hands raised, eyes gleaming with something cold and unforgiving. "You don't understand." His voice cut through the noise. "He's not who he says. None of this is real." The crowd shifted, gasps rising. Jonathan's heart hammered. Luke took an unsteady step back, shaking his head, voice trembling. "No, you're lying." "You don't know what?" Suddenly, flashing lights flickered. More police surged toward the scene. Then, something impossible. The small boy, the one in the wheelchair, he gasped sharply, pointing at Luke. "Brother?" he whispered again, voice cracking. But then, the boy's eyes rolled back, and his body went stiff. The mother screamed, panic slicing through the air. Jonathan's stomach dropped. Before anyone could reach the boy, his chest convulsed in a sudden, violent spasm. A horrified silence fell. And then, shock exploded. The boy's wheelchair lurched forward on its own, moving, gliding across the pavement. Jonathan blinked, heart stalling. The boy's hand twitched and then raised. A voice came from the boy, soft, low, and unmistakably clear. "It's not him. It's a lie." The crowd froze. Jonathan's mouth went dry. Luke's face paled, confusion twisting into horror. The boy's voice, no, not the boy's, was deeper, colder, mocking. Somewhere deep inside the chaos, a single truth fell like a hammer. The boy was not who he appeared to be. The wheelchair stopped in front of Luke, and the boy's head turned slowly. His eyes gleamed black, empty, until the skin on his face rippled. Jonathan took an involuntary step back as the boy's face melted away, transforming, twisting like smoke curling in the wind. The figure before them was no child at all, It was the dark-suited man. He smiled, wide, cruel. Surprised? His voice slithered into the hushed crowd. "You've been puppeteered, Jonathan." The folder spilled open again, papers fluttering wildly as a cold wind swept the park. "You thought this was a family tragedy. A lost brother, a desperate man, but none of it is true." Jonathan's brain scrambled, lies tangled with reality in a dizzying storm. The man stepped forward, tone sharp, relentless. "Luke never existed. Not really. He was a ghost you created." Jonathan's eyes burned, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. Look closer, and you'll see the truth was buried beneath you all along." The air thickened with dread. Sarah's wild voice caught in her throat. She looked between Jonathan and the man, face breaking in disbelief. The boy, the brother, had been a mask. Luke was never his name. The man bent low, whispering into Jonathan's ear. "The brother you mourned, the empire you built your life upon, was a lie crafted to hide the real monster." Jonathan staggered. His own reflection seemed to ripple behind the man's cold eyes. And then the voice, the stark, shattering knowledge. He was not just the brother. He was the villain of his own story. The crowd pulled back, murmurs rising to screams. Who is he? What monster? Is this some sick game? Jonathan's breath caught. The dark man's grin split wider. "Look homeward, Jonathan. Look where your hands have led you." Suddenly, bright spotlights snapped on from the street, revealing faces Jonathan thought he knew. Friends, allies, now cold and watchful. The man's voice dripped with venom. "This ends tonight, and the story you believed in just died." Before Jonathan could react, the dark man disappeared into the swirling crowd, leaving only shadows melting into darkness, leaving behind shattered truths and a blazing question. If Luke was never real, then who was the man Jonathan chased all these years? And what was the darkness hiding behind his own name? Jonathan's knees felt weak. The night closed in, and the city held its breath, for the real story was only beginning. Jonathan's knees buckled. The city swallowed his breath whole, the cold night bleeding into his bones. The crowd pulled back, whispers boiling into shocked gasps. The dark man's words hung thick. Your empire was built on blood, and soon your family will pay the price. Then a sudden crack echoed sharper than any gunshot. A scream split the frozen air. Jonathan whipped around. From the edge of the crowd, a woman fell hard to the pavement, clutching her chest. Her face twisted in agony, eyes wide and burning with terror. Sarah's breath hitched, shallow, sharp. Blood welled through her fingers, staining the cracked concrete dark. No. Jonathan's voice broke as he knelt beside her, shaking her gently. His chest squeezed tight, a lump rising like drowning. Her eyes locked on his, frantic, desperate. "You have to listen," she gasped, voice barely a whisper. "It's not Luke, not your brother." His mind slammed against the impossible. "What do you mean?" he asked, voice hollow. Sarah coughed, a brutal shudder racking her frame. He's the truth you buried, the nightmare you hid." Her gaze flicked toward the dark man, who vanished between the broken crowd like smoke. Before Jonathan could ask again, the silence cracked with cold, brutal clarity. Sirens screamed closer, urgent, unforgiving. A sharp voice pierced the tension. "Freeze! Police! Step back!" Uniformed officers surged forward, pressing against the masses like a tightening fist. Jonathan's gaze caught the boy's mother, trembling, clutching her silent son. The boy's face was pale, eyes wide with something that wasn't fear, but recognition. Jonathan's heart lurched. Then, without warning, his phone vibrated in his pocket. He pulled it out with shaking hands. A message flashed on the screen. Simple but chilling. "You never knew your real family, and you never knew what you brought with you." No number, no sender. Then a picture. A grainy black and white image of a small child, an infant. But the face, it was Jonathan's. Only twisted, altered, half hidden behind shadows. His breath hitched. Suddenly, the world tilted, because beside the infant, standing quietly in the dim frame, was Luke. But not as a grown man, not as the homeless shadow, a child. And next to him, another figure, the woman who had just fallen, Sarah, but younger, smiling faintly. Jonathan's fingers quivered. The message buzzed again. "You were never brothers. You were never family. You were experiments. And I'm coming for you both." The crowd's murmurs turned to panic. "Experiments? What the hell?" someone screamed. Jonathan's eyes darted around, heart tearing apart. He looked at Sarah, her pale lips moving weakly. "I didn't want you to find out this way. You're connected to it all," she whispered. "No," Jonathan breathed. "This can't be." But deep inside, a cold truth sliced through. A secret buried beneath every lie. Luke, this ghost they chased, was never a brother. He was a product, a shadow, born not of family, but of something darker. A twisted past Jonathan never dared to face. And if Luke was an experiment, then what was Jonathan? Who was the real monster? The night closed in tight, suffocating, and Jonathan realized the game had just become far, far worse. The question burned fierce and fast. Who had created them? And what was left to destroy? Jonathan's breath hitched. His hands trembled as he stared at Sarah, lying pale and broken on the cold pavement. The words "experiments" and "never brothers" echoed in his head like a hammer striking steel. His mind spun, dizzy and desperate. The crowd around him shifted uneasily, whispers swelling into scared murmurs. Sirens wailed closer, urgent and angry. Jonathan's phone vibrated again. He barely looked, too numb, but the screen flashed a new message. "You're ready now. Time to see the truth." His chest tightened. The sky above seemed to darken faster, swallowing the park in shadows. Then a voice cut through the crowd, clear, cold, familiar. "Jonathan." He turned sharply, heart racing. There, stepping out from the shadows like a ghost, was Luke. But not the ragged man he'd met moments before. No, this Luke was clean, sharp, his clothes crisp and new. His eyes burned with a cold fire, something ruthless and raw. But it wasn't Luke. It was someone else, someone worse. Before Jonathan could react, the figure reached inside his coat and pulled free a small, shining device, something like a remote. A wave of panic slammed Jonathan's chest as the crowd froze, caught in the icy grip of silence. Then in a voice that cut through the stillness like a knife, the man said, "Enough lies. Time to end the game." Suddenly, explosions. Not far off, a series of deafening blasts ripped the air, throwing shockwaves that rattled windows, knocked phones from hands, sent people sprawling. Sirens screamed, even louder, chaos bursting free like wildfire. Glasses shattered, screams erupted. The air was thick with smoke and dust. People ran, stumbling, terrified. Jonathan's knees buckled, his heart seized. The man with the device smiled, cold, unflinching, and pressed a button. In that instant, the wheelchair beside Jonathan's feet lurched violently forward, the boy's eyes snapping open wide, and his face twisted in agony. Except now, the boy wasn't just a boy anymore. His skin rippled, melting like wax beneath a flame. The crowd gasped, some screaming, some frozen in disbelief. Jonathan staggered back, eyes wide, as the boy's form shifted, growing taller, broader. Features sharpened and warped. No child anymore, but something else. The dark figure next to him laughed, a cruel, hollow sound. "What you see," he said quietly, "is what none of you ever expected." Then, with a flick of the device, the world around Jonathan seemed to bend and fracture. The faces of the crowd blurred and melted into each other, their voices warping into a dreadful chorus of accusation and fear. What are you?" Jonathan demanded, voice cracking, breath shallow. The man fixed him with a stare colder than ice. "I am the truth you ran from. The nightmare inside your empire, the puppet master and the poison." Jonathan's chest heaved. A sharp pain stabbed deep through his ribs. "No," he whispered, "this can't be." The man, this twisted shadow, smiled again, but it wasn't his smile. It was Luke's smile. The smile he remembered from the photos, the darker days. "I've never been your brother," the figure said, "because there never was a brother. Just lies stuffed into your memory. You made me up to hide the fact that you are what they fear most." Cold sweat slicked Jonathan's back. "I am you." The words slammed down like a wrecking ball. The crowd's panic turned into stunned silence, eyes darting between Jonathan and the shifting figure that now seemed less like an enemy and more like a shadow, his shadow. The boy, the brother, the homeless man, none of it was real. It was a mask, a mirror, a fracture inside Jonathan's own mind. His world tilted, fractured, shattered beyond repair. "Who am I then?" Jonathan whispered, voice breaking through the ruin. The man's lips twisted into a bitter, horrifying grin. "A weapon, a secret, the failure no one dared to admit, and now," he pressed the button again. Everything went black. When Jonathan's eyes fluttered open, the crowd around him was gone. The park was empty, quiet, too quiet. He was alone with the boy. The real boy, this time. The wheelchair's wheels turned slowly, and the boy's eyes met his. But now, there was no fear, no confusion, only a strange calm. "Jonathan," the boy said softly, "remember me." Jonathan's throat closed tight, because the boy's face was his own. The city waited outside, silent and watching. But Jonathan was left asking the only question that mattered. Who was he really? And what truth had been buried so deep it needed to kill to stay hidden? Jonathan's throat tightened as the boy's soft voice echoed in the empty park. His own face stared back at him, pale and calm. Too calm. The world felt hollow. He took a shaky step forward, reached out as if to touch the boy's cheek, but his hand trembled, faltering in the cold air. Then, without warning, a sharp crack shattered the silence. A sudden flash of white light exploded nearby, blinding Jonathan. His ears rang. The ground beneath him rumbled hard, sending a shock shaking through his bones. He stumbled backward, coughing as dust and debris filled the air. When the smoke cleared, the boy, his own reflection, was gone. In his place stood a woman, tall, fierce, with eyes burning ice blue and hair that flickered like fire. She stepped forward, her stare slicing through the haze straight to Jonathan's chest. "Surprised to see me?" she said, voice low but fierce. Jonathan blinked. His heart galloped. Who are you?" A cruel smile twisted her lips. "I'm the real reason you don't remember." The crowd, thin and distant now like ghosts, began to loom again at the edges of his vision, voices creeping in, soft and unreadable. Jonathan pressed his hand to his chest, breath catching like he'd slammed into a wall. I don't understand. She took another step, closer, and her voice dropped to a whisper that thudded in his bones. You think you lost a brother? You think you've been chasing shadows? No, you lost yourself. I lost you. His knees buckled. The sky above blurred like a spilled painting. I'm your daughter, she said. Your real blood. The silence shattered. His mind raced, heart cracking open like glass. You have no daughter, he gasped, shaking his head. It was impossible. Her eyes flashed. Impossible? She spat. Like everything else you buried beneath your lies? The experiments? The family secrets? The missing years? You erased me, hidden me, locked me away like I was a mistake. Jonathan's breath hitched, tears stinging. Out of nowhere, memories clawed their way up. Snapshots of a little girl, of laughter twisted into screams, of cold cages and voices calling his name. In the dark, the mother of the boy, the woman who'd held him silently moments ago, stepped into the clearing, her eyes wide with a new kind of terror. Dad, the woman said. The word hung fragile, shattered. Jonathan's world spun faster, the pieces no longer fitting anything he thought he knew. I was kept apart from you, she said, voice cracking but laced with fierce fire. Because you were the monster hiding in plain sight. His skin crawled. No, not me. Her laugh was hollow, bitter. You wanted a brother to hate, a ghost to blame. So you forgot the daughter you destroyed. Breath caught in his throat. His hands clutched at empty space. Around them, the long shadows of the city crept closer, swallowing the park whole. The distant sirens faded, cut by a new silence, heavy, dark, endless. Jonathan's voice broke, raw and small. Why now? Why tell me this? She stepped back, eyes burning with years of pain. Because the truth is coming, and if you don't face it, it will destroy you. And with that, she turned, fading into the night like smoke. Jonathan collapsed to his knees, chest trembling like a desperate drum. The boy's wheelchair rolled silently back into view. Empty now, the air thick with a question that would not die. If Luke was never real, and the family betrayed him, who was this daughter, and what nightmare had Jonathan really been running from all his life? Jonathan collapsed to his knees, chest trembling like a desperate drum. The boy's wheelchair rolled silently back into view. Empty now, the air thick with a question that would not die. If Luke was never real, and the family betrayed him, who was this daughter? And what nightmare had Jonathan really been running from all his life? A cold breeze swept through the park, stirring scattered papers and the whispers of the stunned crowd. Jonathan's mind was a chaos of broken pieces, each one stabbing sharp and raw. His daughter. No, impossible. Yet here she was, alive, angry, real, or so it seemed. He barely registered the mounting noise, the crowd shifting, voices rising into a frantic buzz. Somewhere nearby, a child cried out. Jonathan's heart thudded painfully. His body ached, legs weak. Then, A piercing scream cut through the night. Heads whipped toward the playground shadows, where suddenly spotlights flared, blinding and stark. Figures moved fast, aggressive, precise. Before Jonathan could react, the crowd parted like a tidal wave, and police officers surged in, tightly surrounding someone, the dark-suited man who had vanished moments before. But he wasn't alone. Behind the man stepped Luke, not ragged, not desperate, but standing tall and calm. His eyes, once haunted, now seemed sharp, cutting through the chaos like cold glass. Jonathan's breath caught and shattered in his chest. "Jonathan," Luke said, voice steady but low, "you've been chasing ghosts, but I'm here, and so is the truth." Sarah's weak voice trembled from behind Jonathan. "Luke, what's going on? Why?" Luke turned slowly, face unreadable. Then, without warning, the dark-suited man dropped to the ground, clutching his chest, choking out a gasped curse. Eyes wild with shock, Jonathan scrambled toward him. "Poisoned," Luke hissed, stepping past the crowd that closed in harder. "No!" Jonathan's throat tightened. "Why?" Before anyone could move, the dark man's face twisted in agony, and with a desperate cough, he spat out a tiny, glinting chip. Jonathan's hands trembled as he grabbed the device. Luke's voice dropped to a whisper, deadly serious. "It's not just a game, John. This," he gestured at the dark man, "this was the trigger. Someone's controlling this from the shadows, using us all." Jonathan blinked, heart pounding. Suddenly, the crowd gasped again. From the edge of the park, a figure stormed forward. A man in a lab coat, eyes burning, face pale but furious. "Enough!" he shouted, voice cracking with rage and pain. "I'm Dr. Michaels. I created you. All of you." Silence crashed down like an avalanche. Jonathan's knees nearly buckled. Luke's eyes locked on the newcomer. Shock and betrayal tangled in his gaze. "This experiment," the doctor said, voice raw, "the one you called family, the memories, the lies, they were designed, fabricated, to hide something much worse." Jonathan's chest squeezed tight. The world spun faster and faster. "You think you found the truth?" the doctor continued, voice gathering dark power. "But you're still puppets, controlled by forces you don't even understand. I tried to stop it. I tried to save you." Jonathan looked at Luke, looked at Sarah, lying pale behind him. His daughter. This man's words clawed deep. "What are you talking about?" Jonathan's voice cracked like dry wood. Dr. Michael's gaze burned through him. "You're not just brothers, not family. You're part of a program, clones, copies, shadows of the original people who built this empire." The words shattered the ground beneath Jonathan's feet. "Clones?" Sarah whispered, voice fragile. "Yes." The doctor's face twisted with tortured honesty. "You, Luke, your daughter, All of you. Replicas made to inherit power, secrets to cover sins. None of you are real. You've been living lies, false memories, false pain. Jonathan's hands dropped to his knees, stomach twisting like a knot. His own face, the faces he thought he loved, were masks, shells, lies. Luke sank to the ground, face buried in his hands. The city's sirens echoed like a verdict, and Jonathan's breath hitched with the final, brutal question that burned in the chill night. If none of this was real, who was the original? And if they were copies, who had set the fire that would burn them all alive? The cold night slammed down hard, pressing on Jonathan like a weight he couldn't shake. The crowd around him was tense, murmurs growing louder, fear spreading like wildfire. Dr. Michael's words crashed through the air. Clones, lies, shadows of real people. Jonathan's hands trembled, heart pounding, as the pieces of his world spiraled deeper into darkness. Luke's shoulders shook as he sank to the pavement, face hidden in his hands. Sarah leaned weakly against a nearby tree, pale but burning with fierce eyes. Jonathan stared at them both, his family, or the ghosts pretending to be one. Suddenly, the distant sound of heavy footsteps cut through the night. From the shadows emerged a group of men in black, their faces hidden beneath hoods, moving with purpose and silence that screamed danger. Jonathan's breath caught. The blood drained from his face. Someone was coming to finish this. No one spoke, but Luke looked up, eyes flickering with doubt, fury, and fear. "This isn't over," he said quietly, voice breaking. "They never wanted us free." Jonathan's throat tightened. His hands curled into fists, nails biting into palms, raw with tension. The city beyond the park felt miles away, distant and cold, like a place he no longer belonged. Sarah tried to stand, but faltered. Jonathan moved to catch her, a brief flicker of something real. Hope? Care? It vanished as swiftly as it came. The silence screamed louder than any words. Then, the sharp snap of a handcuff clicking. Police officers moved in fast, pushing back the shadows with their bright lights and loud commands. "Stay calm, everyone, stay calm," a voice shouted. But calm was the furthest thing from anyone's mind. The dark men halted, melting back into the night's folds. The crowd gasped, some cheering softly, others too stunned to move. Jonathan stood frozen, pulse hammering, sweat slick on his skin. His eyes caught Luke's, a silent understanding passing between them. They were both prisoners and pawns in a war they barely understood. Somewhere beyond the flashing lights, a low hum began. A signal? A countdown? Jonathan felt Sarah's hand slip into his, fragile but real. "We have to keep fighting," she whispered. "Not for empire, not for secrets, but for us." He nodded, breath shaky but steel-tempered. The boy in the wheelchair, silent all this time, suddenly turned toward Jonathan. His eyes held no fear now, just a calm knowing. "Remember," he said softly, voice almost a breeze on the wind. Jonathan's chest tightened, heart clenched like a fist. He didn't ask what. He already knew. The city waited, dark, hungry, and restless. Jonathan looked up, the moon breaking through the clouds like a silver blade. The truth wasn't behind them. It was waiting. And so was the fight. If you need to subscribe now, if you want to catch every twist and turn coming next, don't wait. Hit that red button and join the ride. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button right now. Every single click pushes this story further. The algorithm pays attention, and you do too. Flood the comment section with your reactions, your theories, your shock. Let's blow it up together. You won't want to miss what fans everywhere are saying. And most importantly, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how it ends. True fans know this is how we keep stories alive. Subscribe, like, comment, share. The real story is just beginning. Are you ready?